So I'm part of a public speaking group, and it's a group that I originally joined to become more confident. And so recently, since the world's in like a pandemic, it's the place that we were supposed to do the public speaking club shut down, or at least they're not letting the group meet anymore. So for this public speaking group, people had to start doing it over the phone. They were having like online meetings where everybody would they would speak to each other online instead. And in the messages, we meet like once a week. I haven't been attending the meetings just because I've been really busy. Probably an excuse, but anyway, there's a woman in the chat, and she said something that kind of like caught my eye. She said, sorry I missed the meeting this week. I guess all this stuff that's happening in society is finally getting to me. And I'm supposed to be the positive one. So this is not like me. This is not like me. I'm the positive one. This is not like me. Like, she was saying that. And I thought it was very, it reminded me of myself in certain situations where I would try to live up to these expectations, right? Like, if you start to get really good at something, or if you start to do something over and over again, sometimes people give you an identity. For her, it was that she's the positive one. She would say something positive all the time, and she got known to be the positive one. Well, what happens when you create an identity around that behavior, when people are constantly telling you, yeah, you're the positive one, be that more, we like it. What happens then is that you start to get attached to that identity. And so you start to feel like you can't feel sad, or you can't feel negative, or you can't feel the other emotions besides positivity. It kind of reminds me of this movie, I think it was Inside Out, where it shows these characters inside of a person's brain. It's like a cartoon movie, but it's actually pretty deep. And it shows this girl who has different parts of her brain that cause her to behave in different ways. And in her brain, her parents reward her over and over again for being happy. Whenever she's happy and puts aside her sad feelings and just is happy all the time, her parents reward her for that, and she goes on just living her life as being happy all the time. And spoiler alert for this movie, she ends up neglecting her other emotions, her sad emotion in particular. And it ends up really screwing up her brain. And I'm not going to tell you what happens in the movie, actually, because I don't want to spoil it. It's a really good movie. But anyways, you kind of learn that it's sadness does have its place. And it's important to be emotionally intelligent. It's important to be to have, what is it I'm trying to say? It's important to experience all of your emotions, because they all have a use. Sometimes it is important to feel sad so you can process certain things. So with this woman in my public speaking club, she, just to use her as an example, I mean, we all probably have this flaw at some point in our lives. She basically built this identity up where she's positive all the time. Well, I feel like that could really lead to some, I don't know, I think it's detrimental to your self-esteem, because you're not actually, when you're being rewarded for being positive all the time, you're not actually, I don't think you're building your self-esteem. I think you're building your ego, because your ego is saying, oh yeah, you have this identity as this positive person, you're just positive all the time. Great, yeah, positive me. But then what's underneath that, I feel like that's a mask for what you're really feeling, which should be just all of the emotions. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're frustrated, sometimes you feel at ease, sometimes this and that. I can't think of all the emotions right now, but I think I hit a good amount of them. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this and kind of get you thinking. If you're watching this, I just want to get you thinking about this, because sometimes, like, I feel like a lot of people, particularly in, like, I don't know, my generation, well, not really. I mean, like, pretty much everybody struggles with self-esteem. Pretty much everybody who's alive. I mean, maybe particularly like my generation and the generation above me, like in their 20s or like 30s or 40s or 50s, because I feel like a lot of the times we try to like put aside our emotions, and we try to like act like everything's all right. We act like everything is okay. But it's okay to admit that things aren't okay at a certain point. I mean, you have to be real. Like, if you're like, particularly with guys, like a lot of guys in society try to hide their emotions. I guess men and women too. Like, if they're trying to succeed in work or something, they try to like hide their emotions. And I think that's necessary at certain points. I mean, you don't want to be like crying when you're trying to like, I don't know, communicate something, because if you're sobbing, it's going to obstruct you from communicating. I don't know. Look, I think that at the end of the day, if you're trying to bury things deep inside of you and you can't express your emotions properly, you need to take a seat in your room alone and just like think about what's making you feel like these emotions that are deep down that you're not really like processing properly. You're not allowing yourself to feel them. I think a good way to do this is like to just sit on your bed at the end of the day and meditate, and just try to like identify what emotion you're having, and just like feel it. Just feel it. Maybe even try to feel where it's coming from, and just let yourself feel it. Because like building up this identity, from what I've seen, building up an identity that is actually covering up what you're actually feeling underneath is not a good thing. I mean, the emotions will just build up and up and up until you can really let them out. And it could be, I don't know, you could have like a breakdown or something, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of just speaking from not only like experience, but also with things I've read. Yeah. So anyways, this was kind of a rant on building an identity to cover up like your actual emotions and your actual self. And that even goes for a skill. Like, say you get really good at a skill. Like, I've seen this with athletes too. I've seen like athletes build their identity around being an athlete, and then everybody's giving them props. They're relying on everybody else around them who's telling them, you're such a good athlete, you're such a good athlete. And then they go, like, if they get injured and they can't play their sport anymore, they literally don't know who they are. It's crazy. Like, I don't think that you should derive your happiness and your sense of self-worth from this identity that you build from other people giving you props. I think I don't really know what the solution to this is, other than kind of separating yourself from like the validation of other people, and just focusing on being like here and now and like present in the moment, and just realizing that you're a human just like everybody else, and you're just a human living on this planet, and being like really, really present in the moment. And what that means is like literally focusing on what you're doing at this very moment, and just focusing on being. I know that's a little like woo-woo and kind of weird, but I mean, I don't know. It helps me a lot with happiness. I do mindfulness meditation a lot, where I just like focus on my breath, and I focus on like the here and now. What I do actually is, if I like start, like I usually sit there for like 10 or 20 minutes meditating. And if I start to think about the past, I acknowledge that, I identify it. I'm like, oh wait, those thoughts that are coming up are thoughts about earlier today. Okay, so bring it back to the present, like right now, right in this moment. And then it's like, oh, I have some anxiety about the future. Oh, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen later? And I acknowledge those thoughts and I bring it back. And I just keep bringing it back to this moment, like what my breath feels like, what I'm feeling right now, the room around me. Yeah, I think being present is like really important. And learning how to feel and process emotions is really important too. And letting go of any identity that you're building that's just being like rewarded by the people around you, because then your self-confidence is really out of your control if you're doing that. You know, if you're relying on other people who are telling you, oh, you're such a good athlete, or oh, you're such a positive person. Because when you're not a positive person, or when you get injured and you can't be an athlete anymore, then people aren't going to tell you those same things, and then what? You're going to feel like crap? I mean, that doesn't seem very sustainable or reasonable for you to live your life like that, just relying on other people for your own happiness. I think it needs to come from within. I think you need to drive your emotions and your happiness from within, and just really define who you are yourself, and then focus more on what you are telling or not telling yourself, but what you're, I don't know, just realize that you're a human being just like everybody else, I guess. And I don't know, I'm kind of just rambling right now. Hopefully this rant made you think a little bit. Certainly I'm still thinking, still figuring things out. So anyway, yeah, this was like really raw. I just felt like making this video. If you like it, go ahead and leave a comment if this resonated with you. But if not, yeah, have a good day. Peace. After watching the video I just made, I sort of just, I was doing some more thinking on what self-esteem actually is and where it comes from. I think that in order to like actually build self-esteem, because I talked about how to like identify like the ego and this like identity that you can build around you, but how do you actually like build self-esteem? Well, what I think is it's a combination of you feeling good about yourself and just accepting yourself completely for where you're at in life, just accepting your circumstances and still maybe doing things to improve them. I mean, definitely doing things to improve them, but accepting where you're at. But then also choosing people in your life to have around you that support you and like you for you, and that will support you, you know, no matter what, if you have that positive person identity, or if you need to experience other emotions, or if you are that like athlete, or if you're like injured and you're not able to play anymore. I think that having people who will support you in your life no matter what, like, you know, family members and friends, people like that, yeah, who can support you. I think that's that over time, just having those people in your life, and then over time, just like learning to accept wherever you're at, and then just doing your best that particular day. I think that's what really builds self-esteem.